Hi, everybody. This is Brian Poth from the Source LGBT Plus Center, and welcome to the Virtual Center. So I wanted to introduce Sarah Marquez from Act for Women and Girls. Hi, Sarah.
Hey Brian, thanks for
Sarah is
having me.
the, oh, what?
Thanks for having me.
Oh, gosh, yeah, I forgot to tell everybody what you do. So Sarah is the alumni coordinator, a feminist, and a sci-fi fan. So thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure.
So how are things going working from home for you?
Um, Pretty good, pretty exciting. So I'm one of the high risk folks. So my contact has been limited um for a while now. Um, and so yeah, so it feels actually pretty natural for me. I'm a person with a disability, and I've spent plenty of time where I have no option but to be at home. So it's exciting to be on conference calls and Zoom meetings with my colleagues, and sharing memes in our chats. Really bringing, instead of it just being like a quick business thing, we're now really focusing on making sure like that office culture is alive and well online. And so I'm super, super pumped and excited about that.
That's awesome. So you shared that you are high risk and you've been working from home probably long before some of us have. And so, what are some of your, just curious, what are some of your tips and tricks for staying like motivated and also um, just the tips and tricks from working from home? Because I used to work from home, but I would do that in my pajamas all day, and it sort of turns into like a low grade depression for me, you know? Because
Yeah.
I can go a couple days and think, oh wow, I should probably do something about my showering or something. So what are your tips for folks?
um, to keep a routine. That sounds boring. But to keep a steady routine of, you wake up at a certain time, you have your meals at a certain time. And what's funny is I think actually work from home requires a lot more breaks because there's a mental health aspect to it, especially if you're used to being in the office around so many people, that you do need to take more times for frequent breaks where it's just like, okay, I have to step away from this computer for like 5 minutes
Mhm.
and step outside and stretch, text one of my family members, um, grab something to drink, and then I'm like, okay, now it's time to come back. And then the other thing is to get set up your workstation as comfortable as possible, um, but allow yourself the grace to be upset and frustrated. And know that that's like probably a 100% guarantee. Like it will happen. It still happens with me. But it's okay. You can always reset, go back to your routine, and start again.
Yeah, that's great. I found a lot of that to be true already just in the last 3 days. The frustration. The other thing is like I don't know if I have spent as much time in front of the computer because at work you're with people and you're moving and you're going from one place to another, and so I found at night like to really wind down from all of this screen time has been harder for me. And my
Mm.
go-to usually is to go watch TV, right?
Mhm.
Which is
Mhm.
more screen time. So I keep promising folks that I'm going to be held accountable to some sort of meditation practice and yoga practice. And I'm going to be honest, I haven't done any of that yet. But I can really feel the desire. And I'm also trying to be really, like you said, have some grace around what this is going to look like. So thank you
I
for the
do have
permission. Yeah.
I have one more tip and trick because I cannot do meditation. It's very, very difficult for me. So what I started to do is literally at the top or bottom of every hour, just breathe for 5 minutes. And it's like schedule it in because that's the only, I can't wait till the end of the day. And I can't sit any longer than just that. So micro meditations, that's how I'm getting through it.
I like that. I like that. Think I can do that for sure. Um, okay, so you did touch on a few things, and we had a pre-interview, and I know you fairly well. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this movement to work from home for like everybody, and what that looks like for the disability community, disability justice, just an overall shift in how and the adoption process of this. It was like overnight for most folks. Can you describe what that feels like for yourself or a community as well?
Um, so for me, I'm a working disabled person, and so that's a large privilege in itself. And I have been able to do that because I've adjusted my body and my needs in order to fit in with um, the standards of employment, right? Which means being physically present, which means being up, which means being utilizing my being vocal in order to communicate. Um, and for some folks in the disability community, actually a great number, um, adjusting or switching is not an option. Um, and I know folks in the disability community who are both excited about this transition, but also a little frustrated because there have been people who've literally asked for job interviews to take place over virtually, like a Zoom meeting, and have been denied because that was considered an unreasonable accommodation. So there is a sense of like real deep-seated frustration because they have been denied employment before because these were deemed like not possible.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, overnight, magically, possibilities are birthed. And now
Uh,
we can all do these things virtually. So there's a little bit of um, there's a hurt, right?
yeah,
Um, and so I think for um, folks that I know, it's like, okay, we're doing this right now, and we need to because it's a global pandemic. But how are organizations, employers, other service agencies adapting what they learn right here, right now in this pandemic for the long run? So that way, disabled folks always have access or always have these options. And how can folks remember that creative, innovative spirit that disabled people have to live in order to survive?
right.
How can other folks also embrace that idea and start really coming up with creative ways to keep making things accessible?
I can see a lot, both things, right? Like you said, there's a lot of hurt there. And I just want to validate that. Like, I'm an emotional person and I really connect to that real deep-seated hurt. But also I can see and hear the hope that now that people have shown that they can do this, it's time to hold folks accountable to continue to do that. And so maybe there's like more opportunities for us to really draw on the expertise of folks with lived experience of accessibility issues and things like that to really put that at the forefront of our work now, where it's not even something that able-bodied people think about, on a
Yeah.
daily basis. And so that that it's just really important to understand for me to understand, what it's like to be at home all day, and not be able to see my coworkers and not be able to collaborate and things like that in person. So I just want to thank you for sharing that. And so we talked about accessibility. What do you think it looks like going forward? Like, what's a challenge that you could give to just say like the nonprofit sector around accessibility? Because I'm imagining nonprofits are a little bit more nimble. Like when we decided to go home, it was literally us in a room going, okay, well, everyone's going to take their computer home and we're going to do that today. And then on Monday, we'll come up with some sort of policy and procedure around that. Where like
Mhm.
other corporations and stuff don't work that way. They kind of have to have everything in place and then they send folks home if they can. What do you think the challenge? What's the charge here for us in the future?
I think it's about when you talk about policy and procedure, also practice and culture, right? How do you um, apply that spirit of ingenuity in the workplace on a regular basis? So it is like when presented with an access need, it's going instead of going, oh, I don't know, like embracing the, oh, I don't know, like, but I think if we get this person here and this person here, maybe we can figure something out. Let's set up that meeting, right?
Right.
And talk about what's going to be the best way to proceed, or to execute, so somebody's like work plan or that sort of thing. And I think the important thing is to always make sure in regards to access that it's done with the person, not for the person.
Right.
um, and and I think sometimes the challenge for larger, like corporations, even larger nonprofits, uh, it's it's adjusting to an individual when they're so used to setting up systems in generals,
Mm.
and in ideal work productivity models. And I think this is teaching all of us, like, we need to be putting practices in where we slow down and figure out how to do things slower, or to take breaks or to rest, not just individually at our desks, but as an entire corporation, nonprofit, um, people, really.
And how do we do that work without tokenizing folks?
Mm. Um, I think it's um, looking and researching current leaders in the disability justice movement. They're out there. There are some fabulous, well educated lawyers, policymakers with disabilities who are and have been um, doing the work to help and support. So it's reaching out to those folks. It's also about a culture shift as well, right? So it's making sure that folks are consuming art and yeah, just art in
Yeah.
general from people with disabilities,
Right.
um, uh, and and just really just sitting with that and enjoying that and bring it into their life, and like those little things, even for myself. Once I started reaching out more and finding those leaders in the community, one, I felt a bigger, larger community. I felt part of something, and then also, oh, I've never thought of it that way, right? I've never thought of doing it in that way, or, oh, that's a great thing. I wish I would have known that from my other friend. Things just kind of start to happen magically, and it's through intentional, authentic, full human interactions and relationship building.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And I'm like gonna start doing some research today. um, Because yeah, I mean, I can only think of it from like an LGBT standpoint, right? So like people often come to me or talk to me like I speak for everybody, like every gay person, or and I just don't. I can speak from my own experience, and it's not the same at all. Our struggles are personal struggles, but like when those intersections happen, there's sometimes that I feel a little bit tokenized,
Mm.
and I'll push it aside because I feel like, a lot of times I have the privilege of being in the room because of that tokenization, but it's my
Mm.
responsibility when I'm there to speak for people who aren't invited in the room. And I'm usually speaking, I can't be the voice for everybody, right? But you really know, like, when somebody is when they're ignorant and they really just want something from you and they're not wanting to change the system, and you're like, wait a second, I don't want to go to that training, this doesn't feel right, like this isn't going to shift anything, this isn't. So I don't know, I understand a little bit of what it feels like, but most of the time, for me, I was so used to not being able to be authentic, or as a gay person being
Mm.
invited into spaces, or so that when people finally started inviting me as a queer person, I was like, well, I can't say no, because if I say no, then people are going to think I'm whatever, right? They won't invite me again or whatever. So is there some similarity there with other issues and disability?
Um, so two things.
Okay.
In general, yes, absolutely. My personal experience being tokenized as the only disabled person in a room is definitely a thing. Also, my disability is partly visible. So there could be people in the room that are also disabled who aren't being asked or invited to share like their truth in this, right? Um, and then two is um, uh, LGBT and disability are not separate because they're people that hold both identities. And then so when it comes to non-tokenizing, it's how um, do we make sure that we're building those authentic relationships with individual who their whole being, all of the identities, and bringing them up and bringing them into that space, right? Like, I really liked your perspective. Can you join us, or can you help me with this? And then for me, what I started to do, and I'll send you some links and some resources. It would be my
Yay.
pleasure to get
Thank
some
you.
really great uh, disabled disabled and LGBT leaders, because trust me, the LGBT disabled leaders are leading the pack in what needs to be done,
Oh,
and they're
that's awesome.
amazing. There's some really great people out there.
That's awesome to hear.
So yeah, I would say that would be.
Cool. So, I have one last question that I stumbled upon with someone earlier, and I think it's always interesting to find out. So, is there something that you're streaming or binging right now that you absolutely love that everybody should check out?
Oh my gosh. I don't know if my tastes are suitable for everyone or if they'll like it. So I'm a huge science fiction fan, and uh, I did finish binge watching Altered Carbon, which was interesting. Um, and I was definitely watching through disabled person eyes for that one. So anyway, that's fun. And then honestly, anime. My friends want me to watch a lot of anime, so I'm like, okay, now is the time. So I've been binge watching Naruto. Um, trying to do all 900 episodes, like little by little.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, those are my recommendations, my loves. But nothing also beats if you need break from screen time. Just a good book.
Yeah.
Um, and there's
Are you
lots
reading
of.
anything great right now?
I do have this short story book that I'm reading. There's a Greg Bear novel that I'm also reading simultaneously, and some Octavia Butler as well. So I just kind of bounce
Yeah.
in between those
You flip the
three.
channel kind of,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
yes, exactly. So
That's cool. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today. It's so nice to see your smiling face
yeah.
and just have this time together. And stay well and keep in touch. And we'll be posting this today. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome. My pleasure. See you later, Brian.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah.